You were so close to failing, and it would have been so much easier just to quit. What was driving you to keep going?
I think there's an easy answer and there's the truthful answer. Which one do you want?
So, Nigel, you're a very successful entrepreneur. You've built multi-million pound businesses. You've just completed on a £4 million building. If I'd met you 10 years ago and told you you'd be in this building and bought this building, what would you have said to me?
10 years ago. The answer would have been very different to 11 years ago. And I think that's really quite important. 11 years ago, I would not have been surprised. In fact, I'd have been confident that we would be in a building like this, because it was always my plan to build a big business. It was always my plan for the Entrepreneur Circle to have impact. And 11 years ago, we were going like a train. But 10 years ago, I almost lost everything. And 10 years ago, there's no way I would have even dared to conceive that we'd be in the situation that we're in right now, because it all went properly tits up. The 5th of January 2015. And I came into work that day, and long story, but my head of finance and her number 2 had both left the business at Christmas. Very good leavers, very amicable. We gave them a great send-off. And with hindsight, looking back, I should have smelt a rat. But I didn't. And I had a lovely Christmas holiday that year. Christmas 2014 was fantastic. But when I came back into the office at the start of January, we should have had something just over £800,000 in the bank. And I went into the bank accounts online to make some payments, and there was less than £200,000 in the bank. And essentially, what it took us quite a long time to work out, several weeks of forensic analysis to work out, is that we'd lost nearly £750,000. Just to be clear, it wasn't kind of fraud or theft, it was incompetence. And but it put a massive strain on the business. And for the first time in my entrepreneurial life, I was waking up in the morning and checking my bank accounts to see what had come in, to see who I could pay. I had to go through that horrible experience that I think most people that have run a business have gone through, where you're juggling phone calls and you're choosing who you got to pay today and managing people and trying to find a way through it. And it's cancerous to business growth. And it was just the most horrid time. Even when I started out in business, even at the very beginning, when I started my business, we remortgaged our house, did Sue and I, to give us the working capital so that everything could, in theory, carry on as it were, and I would be able to make decisions. And with hindsight, that was a very smart thing, by the way, because most businesses are undercapitalized, and it means they have to bootstrap everything. When you're bootstrapping everything, it's really hard to make the right decisions. It's really hard to make the progress that you could be making, because you're always scrapping and fighting for cash. And having done the remortgage, I always had the cash. So even in those early days, if there were things that were the right thing to do, I was able to do them. And all of a sudden, in that first half of 2015, I was really struggling for cash. And it was visceral, and even talking about it now, I have got a physical reaction to it. And the only way I could see through it was, well, there were 2 ways fundamentally. I could have taken the easy path, which I think in many respects would have been to fold the business and try and phoenix it, but it just was so contrary to everything that I kind of believe in and all the values, and especially in what Entrepreneur Circle does. And the only other alternative to that was this CVA route, a creditors voluntary arrangement. It was fucking horrible, to be honest. But it was the only sensible path. And what it means is that your creditors agree to give you time to pay, basically. And so we managed it. I made sure all the little guys were all looked after, and essentially we owed HMRC a big chunk of money, and there were only 3 or 4 other creditors in there. They were all big boys, BT and Hilton Hotels, that sort of thing. And we took to them the proposal that actually we'd pay all the money that we owed in full, but it would take us 5 years to clear those debts, and they agreed to that. And so we went into this CVA, which again, I hadn't fully realised at the time how impactful that would be. I mean, because it meant any chance we'd have ever getting any credit anywhere again for quite a long time was a thing of the past. And also I had to sign, as part of the deal, that HMRC agreed to it, but I had to sign the forms for HMRC to effectively wind up our business. And I had to pay them the money to wind up the business. And the deal was that if we were late with any of our PAT or POIE payments, they would just be able to execute those documents and fold the business. And that, I promise you, that really focuses the mind. And so we came back from that, and that's what we had to do. And you learn a lot about your people and your team. And some of the team were just amazing and couldn't have been better. And we'd had a lot of good times up to that point as well, you know, and others couldn't wait to run away. So you do learn a lot about people, as well as yourself in times like that. But we dug in, and we absolutely did come back, and it took us less than 5 years, just a smidge over 4 years, till October 2019, when our CVA was fully closed off and fully repaid. And it's strange actually, because you know I have been fortunate and I've achieved a lot in business, but without a shadow of a doubt, my proudest achievement was clearing that CVA, and it's still framed in my office, is the kind of completion certificate. And we became something of a little bit of a poster business for CVAs, because they're quite underutilized, but the truth is lots of them end in failure. They're just the precursor to the business can't come through it, and they end up closing down. But we didn't, and we came back, and in the autumn of 2019 we were full of really big plans for the future, and one of the big plans was we were bringing our big convention back, where we bring well over 1,000 people to the ICC in Birmingham. It's a big event, and in truth it's like £1 million event. So like £1 million comes in and like £950,000 goes out. It's not, at that point it wasn't a particularly money making event for us, but it's a big event, and all the money's gone out to the speakers and the venues and the catering and all the expos and everything else. And it was happening in March of 2020, and 5 days before our convention was when Boris went on telly and asked everyone to stay at home. So we were one of the first events to be properly cancelled because of COVID. And I thought we were screwed, having come through all this CVA, and we're all setting to bounce back, because everyone had paid their money to come. We'd paid out all the money to all our suppliers, to the venue and the caterers and the speakers and everything. And I thought, well, if now we can't run the event, if people ask for their money back, like the money's, I haven't got any more, it's all out all these people. And it was horrible. And then similarly, I think, it's worse, because Entrepreneur Circle is a membership organisation, and people pay a membership fee, and there's no contracts. You're not tied into anything. So if you want to leave at any point, you can. So, well, everyone's just going to batten down the hatches and hunker down, and all our members are going to cancel. And so I was absolutely convinced that we were going to die. And there was a period, I think, there were for lots of business owners in that period. We forget now, because there was no furlough scheme at that point. There were no bounce back loans. It was just like everyone's got to stay at home, and if you're in business, you're fucked. And that was exactly what it kind of felt like. And my second son Elliot was working at the time for M&C Saatchi, the big ad agency in London, and he had a flat down there with a pal of his. And he called me up the day after the announcement. He said, we're all going to work from home. He said, I'd like to come home rather than stay in my flat, which I completely understood. And I said, it's fine, I'll come and pick you up. I'll come for you tomorrow night. I drove down, which again was a spooky thing, drove down the M40, nothing on the roads at all. It was dark. Scooted round to Clapham where his flat was, and kind of scooped him up with his kind of belongings that he was bringing home. And we're coming back on the M40 on this kind of March evening in 2020, where and he says, "What's happening with Entrepreneur Circle?" I said, "Well, I think we're going to die." And I said, "There's this convention, all these people," and through talking it through with Elliot on the M40, and we'd just come past Banbury, and as a result of our conversations, this little idea emerged, and it was with Elliot's help as well. And I remember ringing up some of my team on the rest of the journey, saying, "We've got a plan. I got a plan." I said, "What we're going to do? We're going to run a sort of slimmed down version of our convention, and we're going to do it from our studio, and we're going to do it on Monday, and we're going to invite everybody." I said, "Look, there's 10 grand there. Let's spend that on advertising and promoting it." And our marketing guys went to work the next day, and we spent the 10 grand on Facebook ads in like 72 hours. But like thousands of people registered because, of course, no one had anywhere to go. There was nothing else happening. We responded pretty quickly. And so we ran this event, and it was our biggest live event ever, and it still is our biggest live event ever. We had like over 6,000 people tuned in because, again, they had nothing else to do, on a Monday afternoon, right at the start of lockdown. And we ran this event, and at the end of it, I made this pitch. And I said, "Look, if you want help to get through this, we'll help you." And the whole event was structured around what businesses could do. It was called Operation Protect. That's what we called it. How do you protect your business in a time like this? And we had some really good strategies and some really good insights. And we delivered it well as a team. And we said at the end, if you want help, we'll help you. Just come and join Entrepreneur Circle. It's completely free for the next 3 months because COVID will be fixed in 3 months. It won't go on any longer than that. And what happened in a single afternoon, like 2,500 people joined Entrepreneur Circle. And I was like, fuck. Like, we couldn't bill any money, but we had all their credit cards, but we could bill them in 3 months' time if we were good enough that they wanted to stay. So like, we just threw everything into like, how can we be as helpful as we possibly can so that these people want to stay? I can't compel them to stay. If they want to leave, they'll leave. But if we're good enough, and I think we can be, and we help them enough, some of them might stay. And any Entrepreneur Circle membership, at that point it was like £100 a month in round numbers. So like, 2,500 people, that's like £250,000 a month. So what would have to happen for us to keep these people? And so we started to do so. So we did clinics like every single day during that first lockdown. Every single day, 4:00. I was available online, and we had hundreds of people every single day. And we're dealing with particular cases and helping people, and we're doing stuff. We're writing messages and copy and communication, and we're helping people to pivot and find other opportunities. And everything's feeding off itself. And the Entrepreneur Circle community has just like never been stronger than it was in that really, really kind of dark time. And so, I thought we were going to die. And in many ways, and Elliot and I talked about it in the car on the M40 that night. I thought, well, if we're going to go down, we might as well go down spectacularly. Let's just like die in like the biggest ball of flame that there's ever kind of been. But I was, for quite a long time, certainly, days and days, convinced that we were in the death knell of Entrepreneur Circle. But actually the exact opposite turned out to be the case. And it was like the rebirth. And we'd already done really well from that absolute low point in 2015. Going into the CVA, we'd emerged, we'd repaid all the debt from the CVA, everything was repaid, everything, we didn't owe any money to anybody. The business was absolutely booming. And then COVID hit. And then what happened, like literally on that single afternoon with Operation Protect, is like the business just like doubled in size, like literally overnight. If we could keep those people for 3, oh my God, that's going to be amazing. And we didn't keep all of them, but we did keep a lot of them. We did keep, thousands of them. And there's many hundreds still with us. And it's like well over 5 years now since that first day. And I think, in many respects, this is like a long answer to your question, isn't it? But it's why 10 years ago, I could never have envisaged that we'd be here. 11 years ago, I definitely would have done, because we were riding high in 2014. But in 2019, clear, yes, we can kick on now, and I would have been envisaged as being here. But then like in March 2020, oh no, there's no way we're going to be here. So it's been that classic kind of roller coaster that I think any entrepreneur will kind of recognise and relate to. But you've got to go, it's the tough times that determine where you end up and who you are. There's no question in my mind about that, you know. I think the saying is like, a smooth sea never made a good sailor. And it is true. And it's true, I see it in my team and my staff. The people that have been through a little bit of a shitstorm, you know, are the ones that, you know, you can rely on. And there's other people who are really good, but they haven't got the experience yet. And they need one or two shitstorms, because that is what makes you, that's what separates the kind of wheat from the chaff. And with it comes loads and loads of knowledge and experience, because it is true that what doesn't kill you absolutely makes you stronger and equips you better.
Did you communicate to your customers what was happening? Were you transparent with them? How did you handle that?
So when my accountant's chatting to me about the CVA, he said, oh, the great thing about it is, he says, you don't have to tell anybody. I said, what? He said, right, you don't have to tell anybody. It goes on kind of company's house, but you know, unless people look, you don't have to tell anybody. I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't run a business, especially not one like Entrepreneur Circle, and not be completely open and transparent. And if I do this, I'll have to kind of own it and tell people. And he was very, I don't know anyone that's ever done that, you know, sort of thing. Why would you do that? And but for me, it was the only way I could do it. And so we signed the paperwork to take the business into the CVA on the morning. And that lunchtime in my office, I filmed the video, and it was me just talking to my members, to my customers, to Entrepreneur Circle members. And I told them everything. I told them exactly what happened and what we were doing about it and why we were doing it. And it was so important to me was that, because I could not have anybody, I mean, I hate anyway, I mean, God's secrets are just like, they're another form of cancer, aren't they? You know, because the truth will out at some point. My mother taught me that when I was a little kid, and you know, and she's right. And I cannot have anybody ever having a hold of me on this. So for me, it was the only way to do it, and to just be completely open about what had happened and why. And the video went out, and the response was just extraordinary. And I had, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of emails came in, and many, many dozens of like letters and cards. And it was really interesting how, by sharing my experience, I'd helped so many people, and lots of them were, everybody was just like super supportive, you know, and some people, you know, were you know, just expressing their support. Others were sharing their kind of tale and their stories. And my PA at the time, she pulled them all together and compiled them all into this book. It's like 1.5 inches thick. It says, Nigel gives a shit about his customers, and his customers give a shit about Nigel. And it's a lovely, lovely thing. And that book that she produced effectively, that helped me a lot in those early months of that CVA, because there were some pretty dark times. There were some days when I did not know, truthfully, how we're going to get through it. It's easy to talk about it now. I left home one morning to drive to work, and I couldn't drive to work. And I just drove to a car park, and I sit in the car park, and I just cried my eyes out, because I did not know how I could fix this. I did not know how I was going to get out of this. But action and doing stuff is a brilliant antidote to worry and stress. And I just learned that actually, whenever I got a bit worried or stressed, just do something. Let's just get doing something. And it's that combination of doing things compounds. And we got through it, and we emerged. And now I can talk about it, because it's like a long time ago now. It is like over 10 years ago, since those very, very dark days. But it is poignant at times, like when you come into a building like this now, and you look at what we've done, and I look at the team that we've got, and I look at the membership and the customers and the impact that EC has had, and it's, I'm not gonna lie, that is fulfilling, and it's, you know, and it fuels not just me, but it fuels everybody else here.
So with those 2 dark times that you've had, with the CVA and with COVID, you were so close to failing, and it would have been so much easier just to quit. What was driving you to keep going?
I think there's an easy answer to what drove me to keep going. And there's the truthful answer to what drove me to keep going. Which one do you want?
Both.
The easy answer is when you've got a family and you've got responsibilities and you've got a mortgage and bills to pay, you haven't got any option but to keep going. There genuinely isn't any option. So that's the easy answer. The honest answer goes a bit deeper. When I started in business, and I had the entrepreneurial itch for quite a few years before I started in business. So I carried it like some sort of pent-up thing. But when I started my own business, everybody that mattered in my life, apart from one person, said I was bonkers. They weren't quite as polite as that. People said I was irresponsible. Oh, he's got a young family, so, indulging himself in this business. He should stick to his corporate career, follow the well-established path. And I do understand that. I understand where they were coming from, because they'd never run their own businesses either. And the only person that was really clear was Sue, and she was so supportive. And my biggest driver, right from the very beginning, in 2003, I started my entrepreneurial journey. I was like 36 at the time. And the fear of failure, the humiliation that I would have felt if those fuckers had been proved right, was, on a few occasions, the only thing that kept me going. Because I was just utterly determined that they would not win. And they could not win if I did not fail. So I have to keep going. So let's move forward and put another step forward, and let's do some other stuff.
Do you think EC would be what it is today without the crisis?
There's no way EC would be what it is today without the crisis. No way at all. And I think that's true for any business. We're all of us the sum of our experiences, aren't we? There's no doubt about it. We're way more useful to our customers because of what we went through. I mean, it's easy to give out help and advice and insights when all you've known is a smooth, calm sea. Way more valuable insights when you've been through some proper storms. I'm not sure everybody kind of either understands or would agree with that, but I promise you it's absolutely true.
We've talked about the rough times affecting you and causing you a lot of stress. How did it affect your family?
I mean, it affects everyone close to you. I mean, all your relationships are always affected. I mean, everybody in the house knew when I was prowling the landing in the dark of night, 3:10 in the morning, your relationships with your partner, your kids, they're all impacted to some extent. I mean, just to be clear, Sue and I came through it together. One thing it made me realise, I don't know how an entrepreneur or business owner succeeds over the medium term without a completely supportive partner. I just don't know how you do that. The number of times, being perfectly frank, Sue got me through a particular day or a particular night or whatever it may be. And I don't know how, if you have a partner that, thinks you're a bit crazy anyway, and, well, I told you shouldn't have done that, and it was bound to happen. I don't know how that has to change the threshold where you would kind of get through. In that regard, I just consider myself really, really, really fortunate, because no one has ever had a more supportive partner alongside them. And it would have been, almost certainly would have been different. And honestly, I've spoken with all my kids about the importance. Honestly, it's like and I didn't realise it, but it's like the biggest decision ever in your life is who you're going to spend it with. And, I got very fortunate and got very lucky, and I'm trying to help them be more thought through. because genuinely it's true, and having the right person alongside you is massive.
So, after coming back from nearly losing the business multiple times, what's the biggest lesson that's really stuck with you?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the single biggest thing from, if we write off the COVID scenario, because that was genuinely unique and different. But if I go back to the whole kind of CVA thing, that all came about because I wasn't close enough to my numbers. And it is true that business is a numbers game. The problem is that most people running businesses, their natural space is not the numbers. Their natural space is doing the do, whatever that is. They're cutting hair in the hairdressers, they're drilling teeth in the dentist, they're making up accounts in the accountancy practice. That's what business owners do. We do what we do. But actually, it's the numbers that will be core and critical, first of all to your survival, and then to being able to become sustainable, and ultimately to the level of success. And so many business owners are inhibited because of their weakness, frankly, in that space. And that was definitely true of me. Nigel now would not be going into a CVA 10 years ago. What I know now, there's just no way it would have happened. I would have stopped it because I would have seen it so much earlier. My awareness of what I was looking at and what I should be paying attention to is so different because, again, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so in that regard, without a question of a doubt, the numbers is the critical thing. A lot of people, one of the things we have to be, we're watching out for with our members now, in football terms, often they say, teams never more vulnerable to when they've just scored a goal. You just score one, let one in straight away. And lots of businesses that are growing, that growth makes them vulnerable. It is absolutely possible to grow broke for a number of different reasons. I never understood that. Not in the old days. Didn't understand that at all. Working capital, what's that mean? There's a number that every business needs to have in terms of working capital. If you haven't got it, life's going to be tough. It's so many things around the numbers. And again, I think that's another way that's made us a lot more useful and helpful to our members because we understand it so viscerally, because of what we went through. Because it wasn't just me, it was the whole team went through this.
You've talked about the fear of failure pushing you, and you talk about being really clear on what success looks like. What does success look like for you now?
For several years now, success for me with Entrepreneur Circle has been all about impact. It stopped being about the money from a personal perspective quite a long time ago. It's all about impact now and the difference we can make. It's fundamentally the reason why we've made the big leap to come here and to do it, because it will extend our reach and it will enable us to massively magnify and grow our impact. And success is all wrapped up in that. It's like I'm full of gratitude because like every day I get to work with business owners to help make their businesses better for them and their employees and their customers and their families. And that's a really rewarding thing. Entrepreneur Circle does change lives. And it starts with the business owners and the entrepreneurs who come in and suddenly realise that actually they can get their business beyond where they thought the ceiling was. I mean, the number of families that have, been to Disney World, the number of kids that are in the schools that they wouldn't otherwise have been to, the number of business owners who are living in homes and houses that they never thought they would be able to afford. The number of charities that are being supported by EC members is massive. The number of jobs that have been created by EC members is like just humongous. The amount of tax, additional tax that EC members are paying because of the growth that's been generated, you know, because of what they've uncovered or discovered or implemented as a result of being part of EC. These are, listen, we've definitely, you know, made an impact. We've definitely made a difference. And I do believe that, you know, in the next 3 and 4 and 5 years, we can double and treble and quadruple everything we've done so far in terms of the size and scale of that impact. And that means it's just like ridiculously easy to leap out of bed in the morning and come to this amazing place to do what is really very fulfilling, rewarding, impactful work.
It feels like you're at the peak of your business career. At the age of 59, why are you taking on millions of pounds of debt?
It does feel, at one level, a little bit strange that I'm in my 60th year now. And all of a sudden, because until very recently, weeks ago, I had no debt at all. All our debt was cleared. We had all the cash we needed to do all the things we wanted to do. It was lovely. My life was very, very content. And now we've moved into this amazing building and we've had to put a lot of our own resources into it, and there is a mortgage on this building, which is a sensible thing to do. But it does mean that I now, literally, technically, I've got more debt now than at any point in my life. But look at what we're building. You know, and what we've done is we've acquired an asset. This building is the springboard now for the next chapter of Entrepreneur Circle. And I cannot wait, and I know the rest of the team feel the same about where we can now take this business from a home like this. We're bringing 100 of our members here every single day. The impact that is having is massive compared to what we could do before. We've always known that when we're able to spend time with our members, the impact we can have is magnified. And now we get to do that, 500 or 600 times a week, every week. The building itself, just being here and owning this building, we were able to properly stamp our mark on it. This building has soul, in the same way that this business has soul, and the right people recognise that and respond to it. And as a consequence, our reach is being magnified. So now we're magnifying the reach and we're magnifying the impact. And for any business owner, that's an amazing thing. But for someone that's, who does what we do, that's transformational. Again, to take us to the next level. And just to be clear, my race is not yet run. I've kitted out the gym and the shower here, because it's where my mornings will start here every morning for the next 20 years, in the changing room next to the gym. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, we've got a very aggressive plan to pay down the money that's been spent on this place, to get it all kind of repaid. We've got a very aggressive plan to expand the reach that will in turn enable us to grow the impact. And I'm hugely excited about that.